Hello again, fifth grade. So this is Tuesday, March 30th's lesson video. You should have already watched the correcting homework video for page 591 and 592. If you have not done that yet, you need to stop this video and go back and watch that one first. Correct last night's homework, then you can come back to this lesson video and start on today's notes. So today, we are titling our note page 10.2 Develop a Volume Formula, and today's date, which is 3/30/21. Now you might be thinking, oh man, Missy, there's another formula we have to learn? No, I already introduced you to the volume formula, and that's when we took the three different dimensions, length, width, and height, and we multiplied them all together. That is the formula we're practicing with today. If you remember yesterday, I told you that most of the time when you see a rectangular prism, it will not be in cubes. A lot of the time it's going to be that clear method, or maybe you can't even see through it, but you're given the length, the width, and the height. That's what you're mainly going to see. So that's what we're practicing today. Now, few reminders. Few things we need to remember. 1. Volume is the amount of space inside a 3D object. Volume is the amount of space inside a 3D object. We're not talking about how much can fit on top of it. We're talking about how much can fit inside of it. So for example, if you, in a recipe, sometimes they'll call for like 1 cup of water, or 1 liter of apple cider. When you grab that measuring cup and fill it up with water, you need a specific volume of that liquid in order for it to make the recipe work. So every time when you're baking and you are filling up a measuring cup or a measuring spoon, you are finding the volume of that ingredient, or you're using that ingredient to fill up the volume of your measuring utensil, like your measuring cup or your measuring spoon. And the volume of that is how much you need for that recipe. So with baking and cooking, you use volume. You're finding the amount of space inside a 3D object by filling it up with an ingredient. Another reminder, 3D stands for 3 dimensions. So if I were to say a 2D shape, I'm talking about a 2-dimensional shape. Remember, when something is just 2-dimensional, it's only length and height. How its measurement left to right and its measurement from top to bottom. So 3D stands for 3 dimensions, and those 3 dimensions are length, width, and height. So remember, width is that 3rd dimension, that thickness. If I look at my Scotch tape box again, it has 3 dimensions because I have the length left to right, I have the height top to bottom, but then I also have this 3rd dimension, that thickness, that width. Whereas my Post-it, it just has length and height, but there is no width to it. So 2D object in my Post-it, 3D object in my Scotch tape box. So those dimensions are length, width, and height. Now you're going to draw a little reminder for yourself about a 2-dimensional shape and a 3-dimensional shape as a reminder. And a reminder about the units we use for both of them. So over here on the left, we have our typical 2D shape. We have a square, or actually, like I said, it's probably more of a rectangle. But it's a 2D shape because we have 2 of the dimensions. We have the length and the height. And when we get the area, the length times the height, we put whatever the unit is and we square it because it only has 2 dimensions. So 2D, we put a 2 as our exponent in our unit. But then if we come over to our 3D shape, we still have length and height, but we're adding that 3rd dimension that makes everything more realistic. and that is width, how thick it is. So since we have length, width, and height, 1, 2, 3, it is a 3D shape. This is the difference between a square and a cube. A cube is 3D, or a rectangle and a rectangular prism. A rectangular prism is 3D. And since it's three-dimensional, we need our little 3 in our unit. This is how, 5th grade, we can differentiate in our answer and show whoever's looking at our answer, hey, with this one, we're working with a 2D object, or a two-dimensional object because we have the 2. Over here, we're working with a 3D object. So we have our 3. That's how I like to remember it. It lets whoever's looking at our answer know how many dimensions we just multiplied or used to get our answer. Over here, we only use 2 dimensions. We use length and height. Over here, we use 3 dimensions. We use length and height and width. So now 5th grade, if you need more time getting this part of our notes down, please pause the video. Otherwise, we are going to write down in big letters a reminder about what our volume formula is. Remember, we used this yesterday. This is what I referred to as the clear method. This is the method you will use most often. So go ahead, pause the video if you need more time. Otherwise, let's keep going. Volume formula. Length times width times height. Remember, length goes left to right. Width, that's how thick something is. Remember, it's usually that diagonal line. So I drew one diagonal line slanting up and to the right, and I drew another diagonal line kind of, you could say it's either slanting down and to the right or up and to the left. And then we have our height, which is how tall something is, or its measurement going up and down, top to bottom. So 5th grade, I think what I have here, okay, I have some practice ones. We're going to do one together, and then you get to go ahead and do all the rest on your own. So remember our volume formula, length times width times height. That's how we get the volume. And we remember that when it comes to our unit, after we take our length times our width times our height, we get whatever the unit is. And we always cube it, or put it to the 3rd power. We put an exponent 3 there. All right, so like I said, we're going to have some practice problems. We're going to do the first one together. The rest you get to do on your own. So I'm just going to cover up this guy so you can't see it yet. And we're going to look at this one on the left here. So, well, I suppose you can kind of see through that Post-it. That's okay. Just ignore it for now. Over here, we have a tall rectangular prism. So again, remember, start with the front shape. And remember, I like to use the lines in my notebook to help me. So I made a line that's 1, 2, 3, 4 lines tall. I went over probably the width of my pinky. And then I went straight up, and I used the line here to help me make a straight line. Now, 5th grade, as we're going through this, if you're getting really frustrated by the dotted line part that I have here, you can technically skip that if you want to, as long as you're for sure drawing the solid lines. Okay, I will give you a pass on the dotted lines if you absolutely do not want to draw that because it's too hard. I get it. So go ahead and draw at least all the solid lines. And then we need to label this this left side 11 yards, YD. The bottom side 6 yards, 6 YD. And then this one, this bottom kind of slanted side, 5 yards, 5 YD. If you need more time to draw this out and label them, go ahead and take it. I'm going to start solving. So with this one, we know our volume formula is the length times the width times the height. And if you took as good of notes as I did, you can use the arrowed lines to help you figure out which is which because they are not labeled length, width, and height. Well, length goes from left to right. Well, if I look at the 3 lines, I have this one, and this one. The only one going left to right is this one down here, 6. So, here, let's go ahead and do this. Length times width times height. So my length going left to right is 6 times my width. Remember, it's that slanted line. It's that line that's showing how thick our shape is. Well, I use this one. So I have this one, and then I have this one. This one's going diagonally. That's a 5. So 6 times 5 times, and then height going up and down, well, this one, 11. So I need to figure out what 6 times 5 times 11 equals. So remember, we work left to right usually. 6 times 5 is what, 5th grade? It's 30. So 6 times 5 is 30. So I need to take 30 times 11. So go ahead, off on the side of your notebook, figure out what 30 times 11 equals. And then I want you to write out that answer. Okay, so you should have gone off to the side of your notebook and done 30 or multiplied 30 and 11. 30 times 11 is 330. And what's our unit? Look at the 3 dimensions they gave us. What's our unit? Yards. Yard, yard, yard. This is 330 yards, and you can abbreviate it. And am I done here? Is that my whole unit? No. This is a 3-dimensional figure. We're finding the volume. We need our exponent 3. So 330 yards cubed. And then I'm going to go ahead and circle it. So that's my final answer. 330 yards cubed. So 5th grade, all that you're doing with this volume formula, you're doing the clear method from yesterday. There's no cubes, so we take the length times the width times the height to find the volume. Now I'm going to show you your last 4. You have 4 here. And again, if you don't want to draw out the dotted lines, that is okay. I'm going to show you those 4. Here they are. So what I want you to do is go ahead and get these written out. Now, I wanted to make sure I gave you a variety of rectangular prisms so that you know they don't always look like this one. That's what we've been doing a lot of, or this one. So that's why I drew them a bunch of different ways. So what you can do is go ahead, pause the video, get these all drawn out. Make sure you're labeling all of the lengths, widths, and heights. Make sure you're at least drawing the solid lines. You don't have to do the dotted lines. And then I'd like you to solve all of them. When you are done, press play and we can solve it together. So go ahead, pause the video, get these written out. All right, 5th grade. So you should have paused the video, gotten these all drawn out, and found the volume on your own first. So what we are going to do is I'm probably going to solve the green one, then the pink, then the blue, then the purple. So let me scoot this just a little bit so I have room for my hand. Perfect. Okay. So with our green one, we know that our volume formula is length times width times height. Remember, our length, that goes from left to right. So if I'm looking here, I'm looking at the 3 measurements they give me. 10 centimeters, 3 centimeters, 5 centimeters. Well, the measurement that lines up with the side going left to right, or the line going left to right, is 10 centimeters. So 10 times, then I need to find my width. Remember, the width is the thickness, so it usually has that kind of slanted diagonal line to show us how thick the prism is. Well, that matches up with my 3, that diagonal line. So 10 times 3 times then the height, or how tall it is. Well, that matches up with the 5 that they gave me. So I'm going to work left to right. 10 times 3 is 30. 30 times 5, it's the same as taking 3 times 5 and then adding a 0 onto it, because it's 30. So 3 times 5 is 15, and if I add a 0 onto it, that's 150. Or 30 times 5 is 150. The unit they give me is centimeters. Centimeter, centimeter, centimeter. And since we are finding the volume of a 3D object, I need to show that with my unit. So I'm putting a 3. So 150 centimeters cubed, or 150 centimeters to the 3rd power. In 5th grade, I forgot to mention this because some of you have asked me in the past, Missy, why do we call it squared when we have a 2 here? Well, 5th grade, we're referring to the amount of dimensions. Because remember, we talked about how the only difference between a square and a cube is that 3rd dimension, width. So when we put the 2 there, it's the unit squared because it's 2-dimensional. Whereas if we add the third dimension, of width, that square suddenly becomes a cube. So when we add that 3, we call it cubed. So that's why we call it squared and cubed. We're referring to what dimension, the amount of dimensions. So for my green prism, it's 150 centimeters cubed. That is my volume. Now let's look at our pink one. So here, now I notice that they're all 3. What does this automatically tell you about this shape? We know if it was just a 2-dimensional shape and both of the length and the height were the same, it's a square. So if it's 3-dimensional and all 3 dimensions are the same, it's a cube. So I need to make sure we can still see this guy a little bit. Length times width times height. Well, length, I know they're all the same, but I still want to go through the process to show you. Length, left to right. Well, that matches up with this one up here. Left to right. So 3. Then I need to find my width, or that slanted line that shows us how thick it is. That matches up with this one here. 3. Times the height, or going up and down. Well, that matches up with this one here. 3. So I have 3 times 3 times 3. So I need to work left to right. Well, 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 3 then is 27. They give me the unit feet, feet, feet. So feet. And volume of a 3D object, I need to cube it. 27 feet cubed. All right. 2 more. You guys are doing great. Then we have our blue one here. So length, that's going left to right. Well, out of all 3 of these, that matches up best with this one here. So 2 for my length times my width. Remember, that's that slanted line. Usually it's this one, but that one isn't marked. So I'm going to look. This one is slanted. It's showing us how thick it is, what the width is, or how wide it is. So 5 times the height up and down, that's 20. So, working left to right. 2 times 5 is 10. 10 times 20 is 200. They give me the unit centimeters, 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 centimeters. And I'm finding the volume of a 3D object, so I need to cube it. So 200 centimeters cubed. Then we have our last rectangular prism. It's big. It's a big one. So, length, left to right, right here, 15, times our width, or how thick it is, or how wide, that slanted line here, 8, times the height, up and down, how tall it is, 15, and I need to find what that equals. So, 15 times 8 equals what? Well, it equals 120. And then I need to multiply that by 15. 120 times 15 equals 1,800. So my answer, 15 times 8 times 15, is 1,800 inches cubed. All right, so 5th grade. How are you feeling right now? Now that we're not just doing the cubes, we're just taking our length times our width times our height. Think first, how are you feeling 1 through 5 about just understanding, we take length times width times height. Not necessarily solving it, but just understanding, okay, Missy, I need to find the volume of a rectangular prism or a 3D rectangle. I take the length times the width times the height. I get that. 1 through 5, how are you feeling with just understanding that? Okay. Now think 1 through 5, how are you feeling about the actual multiplying of the 3 different numbers? Were you making any silly mistakes along the way? Were you maybe rushing a little bit? Okay. And now finally think, how good are you doing with remembering the exponent 3 in your unit? Remembering the cube, your unit. Is there maybe something you can work on with your homework for tonight? Definitely. In 5th grade, is there any rule saying you can't have this notebook page out while you're doing your homework? No. Is there any rule that says you can't write out the volume formula at the top of your homework page? No. Is there any rule that says you can't put helpful arrows next to the volume formula to help you remember, okay, which line is length, which is width, and which is height? Is there any rule that says you can't do that? No. It's homework, 5th grade. It's practice. Use your notes. Use your formula. Use your lines to help you. Speaking of homework, let's get started with that. In your workbook, your math workbook, please open up to page 597 and 598. So 597. On page 597, you are circling numbers 1 through 6. So 1 through 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Number 8 and number 13. I'm going to say that one more time. Page 597 and 598, numbers 1 through 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Number 8 and number 13. Nice work today, 5th grade.